Hi, everybody. My name is Tom Murphy, and I had known Jack since high school. We became friends in our college years. And one of the things I remember about him the most was when we were driving to Florida. By the way, Jack, when we were in college, and the most work we'd ever done, we being his contemporaries, was to maybe load trucks during Christmas or during the summer. When we went to college, Jack was in our classes during the day, but then at night, he would have to go, we would go to the bar, we'd be drinking. Jack would have to leave because he was working full time at the Ford plant in Teterboro. I mean, he had a union job. So, like, later in life, when people say Jack doesn't bark, he barked. He worked before anybody fucking worked. You know? But anyway, he bought this Renault Dauphine. That was a shit car. And we went down to Florida in it. And we were switching drivers. And I was sleeping, and he was driving. It was in the middle of the night, probably South Carolina or Georgia. And all of a sudden I go, I hear, Murph, Murph! And I wake up and I'm like, what? What? He pulls over to the side and he says, some little animal ran out and I think I hit it. I said, it's dark. And So I said, I'm sure it's going to be all right. Maybe we should just keep going. So then we go again. I'm starting to nod off. Maybe 5-10 minutes pass. And Jack goes, why didn't it look? And the other one was when we were in class in college. And we had this professor who was like a over-the-top kind of guy, and he was complaining about the Vietnam War and stuff, which is good, but and he kept on talking about relevancy. This is relevant, that's not relevant. Why are you saying something relevant? And Jack slips me this little note, and I look at it and it says, relevant to what? So I knew right away, like, this guy is my friend. That's all I got.
Anyone else? It's an open mic. Anyone else? Anyone else? I know I was out having a cigarette, and people were coming outside, and they started telling me some things, and there's no way I could repeat them and give them any kind of validity. But here we go.
We're going to sing a song that Jack wrote.
Side on the other side. Come here, guys. Come in here. Come here, guys. So, we don't have any stories to tell because we're a mixed company, but there are many that we can tell otherwise. We are a few of the Buns brothers that Jack knew. We were his roommates from 1979 to 1982 in Caldwell, New Jersey. This is Shalom Buns. I'm Run Buns. This is Hun Buns. And Shun Buns. And there's about 10 others of us, but Jack never had a Buns brother name. He was just the Birdman.
Jack Bird.
He was Jack Bird. And if you haven't heard that before, that's what we called him all the time. And he was sort of the senior
member of the house.
Member of the house, and he was the guru. And
spiritual guru.
He was our spiritual guru.
God knows we needed it. We needed Jack's guidance, and he provided it.
Exactly. So we just had so many fond memories of him. Just from my personal perspective, I had lost touch with him after he had gone to Hawaii. But you know how a lot of people have their confessors that they go and they confess to. Jack wasn't my confessor. He was really my decompressor. And quarterly, I would visit him in his Upper East Side Manhattan apartment. And I have this crazy job, and I would just go into Jack's apartment. He'd be sitting there with his guitar, of course, and his I don't think he had too much more than that there, but we would sit and I would go crazy for hours and hours. I wouldn't stop talking, and Jack would just nod and listen and smile. Then we'd go have a bite to eat, and I always walked away, and he hardly said but a few words. It was all about me. And I felt so much better, but it was all about him. But it was because of Jack. It was because he was an incredibly good listener, and he was very philosophical, and he really brought you back to earth when you thought you were all caught up in what corporate America brings to you and those kinds of things. So that's my most recent memory, but we all together knew Jack back from those days, and we are really, really fond memories of him.
Those were the days when Jack played rhythm guitar in the Teasers. He was very famous for that. He was a lead man, the singer in our group. And during the day, he drove a cab, and of course, he carried his guitar without a case. Everywhere he went in the cab, and he played his guitar 6 hours a day, for God's sake. So one summer, he went from being really good to amazingly good. And then he was probably about the most generous person I've ever met. I don't think I ever heard the words no out of his mouth, or no, you can't do that, or there's not enough for you. His famous words were take. Everything he had, he just offered to you if you wanted it. He was the most generous guy, wonderful spirit, and a great philosopher. David?
Yeah, I had originally wanted to, come here and start with a story about how when we were at this place in Caldwell, we would be in the backyard, and we would hear Jack upstairs with Terry the Moaner. And we would hear the merry sound of the headboard banging against the bedroom. But I saw there was children present, so I'm not going to go there. So instead I'll talk about this one time, and this kind of sums up the way Jack was, that you could go into, I remember he was living, one of the 653 places where Jack lived during the course of his life, and at this particular time he was living in someone's attic. And I remember I wanted to go up and see Jack. So we pulled down the hatch, climbed up the ladder.
He was there illegally, by the way.
And I walked up there and I saw Jack was sitting on a box. And he was watching a black and white TV with antennas and tinfoil at the top of the lavalier. And there was one little bulb hanging from the ceiling. And he was, and a bed, a mattress, no sheets, nothing like that, on the joists of the attic. And he was happy as a clam. I mean, that's all Jack needed. And that's the beauty of Jack, is that he didn't need to have things. He was just happy in himself, happy in the path that he had chosen, and we were all happy to have him as part of our lives. Jack died on my birthday, and that sucks. But the good thing is that every time my birthday rolls around, I'm going to think of Jack. Here's to you, Jack.
I don't know if I'm going to be as eloquent as everybody else up here, but give it a shot. The memory that I have of Jack is I was always working. Okay, never had smarts to go into corporate or anything like this, but he said, Mike, I'm going to ride your coattails. But it's almost like he was happy for me, because I was doing the best I could, So I worked as hard as I could so that he could kind of get the joy of watching me work. So it was kind of like a symbiotic relationship. I was doing the best I could and was making him happy as well. So that's what he did for me.
He told me a better Irish brogue. When he would drink a Guinness beer, he'd say, there's a lot of good eating in here. There's a meal in here. No one did a better Irish brogue.
So if I say a few words?
That's what we're waiting for you. We're waiting for you.
Thank you all for being here today for Jack. I know Jack a long time, and a good man. And he used to say, there's a train every day, leaving either way. There's a world, Don't hold back. Go out there and find it. And he did that. Good night, Jack. You were the man.
Anyone else? Anyone from St. Peter's? Anybody else from St. Peter's who wants to come up? All right.
Okay, that's it.
Okay.
That's Sarah, Jack.
Hi, my name's Laura Montenegro, and I actually grew up with Kathy and Jack in West New York. And I used to tell her kids all the time, you and your mom, we knew each other before we were even born, and they can never figure out what I meant by this. Obviously, it was because our parents knew each other. And Jack, I think my brother and Jack were like 8 or 9 years old. And we had the elevator where you closed the door. Do you remember the old elevators? And my mother's was sweeping the house, and Jack and my brother come in, and they're like, trying to get her attention. She's like, I'm cleaning, get out of here. Well, Jack's toe had been cut off by this elevator, and she's like shooing him out the door. But, luckily, I'm sure everything was taken care of. And you might think that's a sad story, but for Jack, it really wasn't, because it kept him out of the Army or the service. So he was able to stay in the United States and not go to Canada. So it was a good thing for Jack. But Jack was like the brother I never had. I do have a brother that I'm not that close with, but with Jack, it was always, whatever you did was positive, and he was always cheering you on. And no matter how menial it was, or whatever crappy job you might have, Jack made it seem like it was the best thing in the world, and you were going to be the best you could do at that job. And I'll miss him because, we both have pools, Kathy and I. And Jack would just come running in, jump in the pool, eat some food, and go and lay down. This was Jack's routine. And I like to sing, and Jack liked to sing. And it was just, there were just really no words to express how great of a guy and how just a sweet of a guy that never had a nasty word for anyone. And it's really a tribute to him, because I know there are a lot of nasty words I have for people. And he just had a good word for anybody and everybody he met. And he will be missed by anybody that he was touched by. And Jack will be thinking of you. And, someday we're going to meet him over that rainbow.